What a headshot! What a head!
How's it guys, this is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I will take you guys through my new series. It's going to be the best value midfielders. Yesterday we created the best value forward video, and before that, the best value defenders. So now it's turn for the midfielders, and tomorrow it's the goalkeepers. So make sure those bell notifications are turned on for tomorrow's video, as this is my latest draft coming up on Sunday. But going back to this video, so yes, the best value midfielders in the game at the moment. I'll be running through all the midfielders, giving you which are the best options, before our conclusion in our series next week, where we go over which options to pick. So that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So going over a quick recap, you guys can skip this if you've watched my previous two videos, but I'm going to give you guys the detail of how I created this video. So the player data I used, like I used for the underpriced and the overpriced options, was going to be points and the prices. Now this is points of last season and the prices of this current season, but I decided to use it in a new formula, aka value, which is points divided by prices. Now another way to describe this would be points per million for each of the midfielders, and we'll be going over the best of them. Now I didn't go over every single midfielder in the game, and I'll explain why. I did use a filter of plus 60 points, which is basically 30 games and 2 appearance points per player. This is quite a low margin, but I wanted to go over options that had featured or had at least got some attacking returns. For example, if a player started in January, signed in the transfer window, if they got 1 or 2 attacking returns, that would have also taken them over that 60 point mark. Now the reason I did this was I wanted to avoid the scenario where an option maybe played 1 or 2 games, but got subbed on late, scored a goal, got an assist, and therefore their value per 90 minutes would have been off the charts. So I've seen this in quite a few seasons, so at least this way we negate that. But if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments down below on my Discord server. I'll try to get back to you if you don't understand the reasoning. But now let's go on to what you guys have been waiting for. These are going to be the best value midfielders in the current FPL game, and there are quite a few surprises. So I'm going to start off on the top right hand side because everyone's kind of eyes usually gravitate to the better options. So you guys can see Douglas Luiz is the best value midfielder in the game. Now the surprises here might be those of you who have been avoiding that kind of 5.5 bracket, that 6 mil bracket, that 4.5 bracket. There are a few options here that actually are good value for money. Now unfortunately for these options, this Premier League season FPL is kind of underpriced a lot of the big hitters, so you guys can get a decent 4 or 5 in midfield with a fairly cheap price point. So that's why a lot of us are avoiding these kind of 5.5s and 6 mils, but if you guys want to look at them again, these are the options to look at. So Douglas Luiz leading the line there, I think he comes in at 5.5, relatively cheap option for Aston Villa, but does like to get a few attacking returns. Unfortunately, Granit Xhaka has left Arsenal, so we can't go for him as an alternative, but luckily Odegaard and Martinelli slot in at 3rd and 4th. Now Martinelli was an interesting one for me because I think a lot of people have been on Saka, some people have been on Odegaard, Jesus, but he's a great asset that might be underrated. Now in terms of Odegaard, I probably wouldn't go for him, same price point as Saka, doesn't have the penalties, but if you guys are looking at him or think he'll replicate last season, he's also an outstanding pick. Now Eze is a nice pick from Crystal Palace with Wilfried Zaha leaving, going to be almost a talisman for that Crystal Palace lineup, and at 6.5 million, a massive value pick. He shares the same kind of value as Gross from Brighton. I probably wouldn't go for him. Yes, he's a great option, but I think Matoma and Solly March might be slightly better. Even an Enciso, if he gets minutes, could be better value. Gibbs White, to play that's always mentioned at that cheaper price point. Jensen from Brentford, could he kind of step up with the absence of Ivan Toney? And then comes a fan favourite, Bukayo Saka, with a very good value per million. And there's a little bit of a gap between him and Mbeumo, but I think Mbeumo is a very good selection to go for, especially if he's going to be the Ivan Toney replacement. We saw in preseason actually Visa starting up front as projected, but Mbeumo off that right hand side could still be strong. Another fan favourite is going to be close by, Rashford. Very high ownership in terms of the kind of template. And that's understandable when you guys see that he has a good value metric. Now there are a few other options here and there, but lots of these players we aren't really looking at. So I'm going to skip right ahead to the kind of the bottom metrics with Bruno Fernandes. So Bruno Fernandes, or Bruno Fernandes, however you guys want to say it, there's been kind of a war in my comments recently about how you pronounce it, so I'm just going to call him Bruno. So Bruno's value last season wasn't that great, but what I will remind you about is expected stats. His XA and XG were off the charts, but unfortunately the conversion rate wasn't there. Especially on the chances created, I think he created so many chances in the Prem last season, only a handful of them were converted. So if you not have a better finishing season, his value is only going to increase. Now the last couple options I will give a shout out to is Mo Salah there, but you guys know he's so expensive, you can't really rate him on a value metric because if you're going to own him, you're going to captain him, so his points are going to almost double. So we'll ignore him for now, but then we do have someone like a James Maddison and a Phil Foden, and as I said with the defenders, when you saw Nathan Ake there on the value metric, if a Man City player is on the value metric, you know that they're going to be gold because the Man City assets rotate so much. You guys will see what I mean when I go over the value per 90 minutes in the next graph, But what this is telling us is that Foden got a decent amount of minutes and also a decent amount of points. So shout out if you guys do have him in your draft. I myself had him in my latest draft. Comment down below if you guys were included in that. Finally, James Maddison. A lot of people have been saying that James Maddison might have a banging season at Spurs in a relegation side of Leicester last season, put up good stats, so imagine what he'll do in a good side like Spurs. I guess that depends if you think that Spurs are a good side, but I personally think that he's going to get a lot of chances to get attacking returns. So in terms of the value metrics, I see that there are some kind of well-priced options here. Odegaard, Martinelli, Saka, Rashford, all these options are pretty popular. You guys can understand why. It means that FPL have given us a chance to actually have a pretty respectable value midfield without paying too much. Let me know how many options in your current midfield are going to be on the screen right now. In my personal team, I own Martinelli, own Saka, own Rashford. I've got Phil Foden, and then Bruno as well. So my current 5 or 4 in midfield is going to be on screen right now, but I think the majority of you guys will also share that. Now the stat I want to go over is going to be slightly more interesting in my opinion. What this does is it takes a per 90 minute average, so the value per 90 minutes of each midfielder. Now this isn't exactly per game started. What I did was I took their minutes divided by 90, so it almost assumes that they played 90 minutes in all their minutes, which might not be the case. I'll be crunching the numbers though in my upcoming midfielder review video, which will be released next week. So on screen right now, yes, it's a little bit cluttered at the bottom side, but it's because we have quite a discrepancy between our top players, which is going to be Murphy from Newcastle. So Murphy is a little bit of an example where he kind of was subbed on, had the threshold of 60 points, but didn't play the majority of games, but when he did, he got you FPL points. So that's why he is quite high. Same can be said about De Silva, and then also Harry Wilson from Fulham. So Harry Wilson had a pretty respectable preseason game for Fulham a few days ago, and whenever he does play, he seems to get you FPL points. However, these 3 options, I've already seen many people kind of focus on them, so let's focus on that kind of mid to bottom side. So the first player of note is going to be Phil Foden, and I've mentioned this, has one of the highest points per 90 minutes out of all midfielders, and that's why you guys are going to see him here. So if Foden does play, he gets you FPL points, and that's why I just hope, if I have him in my Game Week 1 squad, Pep actually starts him full games, because then he's absolute FPL gold. We also have a player like a Willian. If you guys are looking for a Fulham alternative, I know that Mitrovic is probably going to be leaving Fulham. They've just signed Raul Jimenez, but maybe Wilson and William could step up. Another player is going to be Trossard there, a player that comes in cheaper than the other Arsenal mids. If you can get game time, you guys know that he's going to be a good asset. Also have Eze there at the kind of mid-range price, which is a combination. I said this in the Defender video. If you guys can combine the previous graph with this graph, you know you're on for a banger, because what that means is your player's nailed and they're going to get you FPL points every appearance. So for example of that is going to be Eze. If he does play, he gets you points. Now that 6.5 million price tag, is he an alternative to someone like a Mitoma or an Mbumo? Talking about Kevin Mitoma, he's slightly reduced there in terms of value, but still a great asset. And then Martinelli and Jota also coming close. If you guys can pencil down, you can also see that Luis Diaz is going to be there. So Jota, Diaz, both Liverpool assets, could be great value for money if they play. Finally, we have Rashford and also Grealish at the bottom side. So Grealish could be an alternative to a Phil Foden. I know that Pep likes to play him more often, but Phil Foden usually gets more attacking returns in less minutes. So they are quite cramped. So if you guys want to pause the screen right now, I will understand, but I'm going to go on to the conclusion. So as you guys can see, there are a few options here that are different to the previous graph. The previous graph takes the whole season into account. That's why you see a player like an Odegaard, a Martinelli being quite high up, because they started the majority of games and got a lot of points. But when you crunch the kind of per 90 minute stats, you see players like a Phil Foden emerging here, didn't start every game, but when they did, got you FPL points, and therefore their value is going to be increased on the per 90 stats. But I'll be going through all these stats at a more kind of in-depth look in next week's review video, where I actually show which midfielders that you guys should choose. But let me know what your current midfield is looking like. If it's a midfield 4 or midfield 5, how's the value of your current selection? But this is basically a wrap for the video, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for more content, especially the goalkeepers coming up tomorrow, and then the drafts coming up on the weekend. But I'm signing off. This is Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.